Good evening, everyone. My name is Aishwarya. On behalf of Cogni Elements, we welcome you, Prasanna, to our event called InsightX. InsightX is basically a virtual event where we are inviting top professionals from the industry to share their insights with us. So thank you so much, Manjushri and Dr. Apurva, for being here today. We are really grateful that you could take the time out for us. Welcome, ma'am. So moving on to Dr. Apurva Palkar. Dr. Apurva, I would like to take this moment. I did not have the pleasure of meeting you before this. I am quite, I'm quite new compared to the, compared to Angad and everyone else. Yeah, I'm very grateful. I would like to take this moment to thank you from all of us, for everything that you've done for Cogni Elements until now. And we can never repay that. Thank you so much, Dr. Apurva. On behalf of Cogni Elements, we welcome you, Dhruv, to our event called InsightX. So InsightX is basically a virtual event where we are inviting top professionals in the industry to share their insights with us. We are very excited to have you here today, Dhruv. So for everyone, Prasanna Sankhe is he's the co-founder and the CCO of the brand Hyphen, which is India's first brand engagement agency. So Prasanna, for everyone, could you just tell us a little bit about Hyphen?
Yep. So Hyphen is born out of the primary design passion that I have, having been passed out of Sir J.J. School of Arts. And having traveled through the journey of advertising and finally culminating into a national creative director at Publicity, I thought of revisiting my roots of design, because India at that time was in a dire need of a great design intervention, new ways to looking at design, because design was getting a little jaded. So Hyphen was born out of that to help brands engage with the consumer in a very design-oriented way. And that is the future going forward. We are glad that in a short span of 5 years, we entered into the top 10 design agencies in India, and we've never gone out of that ranking. And I think we are the smallest design agency in the top 10.
Okay, that's wonderful to hear. So Dr. Apurva, if you can, introduce your field and, about yourself a little bit and about your experience, that would be great.
Yeah. On this platform, I need to give a different introduction of mine because, I'm an academician at heart and an entrepreneur who wants to look at creating large number of businesses to come from my incubation center. That's been the passion on which I've been working. So initial years of my life, for almost 10 years, I led a business school as a director of the institute, where I was trying to help and support people to get into the industry. And then a stint with the corporate for about 5 years, where I led education conglomerate. And from there, in my journey was in the policy side, where I was associated with the Ministry for Education in the state of Maharashtra. And now for last 2.5 years, I've been associated with Pune University, which is now known as Savitribai Phule Pune University, as Director Innovation Incubation and Incubus. And this job is very dear to my heart, because this is where I'm able to work very, very closely with multiple businesses. Just not one business alone, but since we cater to large spectrum, and the spectrum comprises of people in the information technology domain, in the agriculture space, in the Internet of Things, we are in material sciences. So we do a lot of startups which are in the areas of scientific research getting commercialized, and a lot of them are in the stages of they're already doing good businesses. Having said this is one part of my profile, but the second part, which is dear to my heart and why I chose this particular subject today, is this has been the topic on which I have been doing a lot of research in the past. In fact, the latest paper that is now coming out which is with one of my research students, is on the comparison of the Indian consumers with the consumers in Belgium. So we've taken two economies and we have made a comparison of how things have actually changed and transformed in last couple of months that we've seen. So close to around 14 months where we've seen a shift and a change happening in the consumer market. It is happening in the market spaces, in the way competition, and so on and so forth. So that's one part, and also the kind of businesses that we've seen. So there has been a lot of pivoting that has happened with businesses where people have gone ahead and changed a lot of thoughts. And while on this particular topic, we since I am myself a marketing and a sales professional, from the academic perspective, what significance we give in the startup ecosystem is on one point, which is the customer discovery, because we feel that customer discovery is the most important piece in a business. Unless you have discovered your customer well, even before you have thought of the product that you're bringing in the market, I think we fail in our duties. Otherwise, it is just about pushing your product into the market without really understanding what is the need. So that was the basic premise of the concept of marketing, and that is what made it different from the sales perspective, and that is what we try and infuse in the startups as well, in terms of understanding the consumer well. A latest report that I have come out with, studying 42 startups in the city of Pune, where we have made a mention of the fact that there were hardly about 5 to 7% of the startups which had actually gone in and met up with the customer and had discovered the customer before they brought the product into the market. And this is where people have failed miserably, and COVID is altogether a different ball game, which we will be discussing today in the due course of time. So over to you with all your questions that you may have for us.
Very well said, ma'am. The times are changing. Like you said, the 14 months has changed a lot of things, and everyone is kind of forced to adapt. Even not just the customers, but also businesses are forced to adapt. And like you said, customer discovery. Unless and until you engage in customer discovery, that it's very difficult for you to move on and actually become successful. And then customer experience comes later in the picture. But unless and until you actually touch upon customer discovery, you fail. So for our viewers, Dhruv, could you just introduce yourself a bit?
Sure. Hi, my name is Dhruv Kalra, and I am the COO of this company called Vibgyor Brand Services. We are an experiential marketing company which has been in the event space for more than 18 years now. And I'm also the founder of Happy Flat, which is a smart sampling company that we've launched recently.
Okay. Dhruv, that's very impressive. So let's commence with the session if you're ready.
Sure. If you want a little bit more, I've been doing this. I've been in the experiential marketing for more than 15 years now. Got into this after doing my MBA, and I've been really enjoying my work because it's about creating wow experiences and working with a lot of brands, interacting with consumers, and basically get to experience various things in one.
Also, Prasanna, I would like for you to differentiate between a typical traditional advertising agency and a brand engagement agency.
Right. So what do we do is that we like to holistically over my advertising years experience. What has happened is a lot of my clients became my friends, because once you sit yourself on the other side of the table and understand their problems, I think they open up to you much more about what they really expect from you. And once you're able to see that the solutions that you provide are not merely communication solutions, but they actually help in playing their roles as client. So we learned earlier on that being a part of the entire brand journey is really helpful. So that experience that we gained, we've applied it into Hyphen. And what Hyphen does it comes very early in the stage of the brand journey, even before the brand is born. Even when it's a product concept, we brainstorm with the clients, we interact with them, we help them formulate some ideas and strategies, we help them define the brand world. Then we get onto the naming of the product or the naming of the brand. Then we get into the product design of what it should be, whether it's packaging or the product design itself. Then we get on to the part where you do the brand communication strategy and you learn the market. And then you do the communications part of it, which is the third stage, where you do either digital or ATL or offline communication, which helps the brand. And last but not the least, you go to the brand extension and the brand engagement side of it, where the brand constantly seeks to connect with the consumers in newer ways, because the world, as we know, is changing, right? So it can't be only a communication relationship, right? So we look at the product, we look at the consumer, we look at the market, and we have a 3C method for doing that, which is the consumer, the context, and the creative. The sweet spot of that, we kind of data mine and figure out what is the new way to engage with the consumer. And that's what is the primary difference between Hyphen and the other design agencies, as well as any other advertising agency.
Right. Because even according to my knowledge, advertising agencies were usually the media touch points, not consumer touch points.
Right.
So yeah, I guess I do see the difference. According to you, what are some pointers that can be used to improve customer experience, overall customer experience?
Before I get into customer experience, I think I will want to ponder upon one very important aspect. That is the shift and the change that the market is undergoing. And the shift and the change that the marketing is undergoing is post-pandemic, or the pandemic which is still going on, and which is likely to be with us for the next couple of more months. And as per the theories that are around us, the theories actually state very categorically that it's about 66 days that make a person change a habit. And it's been almost now close to 14-15 months that we have got the customers and the clients to look at a very different kind of a media. So when we speak of a customer experience, which was all the time driven by a physical interface, has suddenly undergone a change. And this change that we are seeing is driven by, probably it is important for all the marketers to think through, the companies that are bringing their products and services in the market, to really have a thorough understanding of what are the changes that are temporary in nature, what are the changes. It's easy to say that 66 days is the journey for a customer to change his habits. For example, for some time, I was also in the media industry. And in the media industry, we always felt that the promoter of the company always said that the day I don't have a vendor who delivers the newspaper to your doorstep will be the day when the industry will cease to exist. This is what has happened in the West as well. So things are driven by some kind of conveniences. And today, Madam was talking about the aspect of real estate. Speak of real estate, speak of beauty industry, speak of FMCG industry. All of them are undergoing a sea change in terms of what and how do I deliver what I really want to do to my customer, and how do I communicate to my customer, and what is the right way of communication to my customer so that I reach out to him. And I'm sure there are a lot of displacements also happening in the market. But at the same time, there are also a lot of innovations coming in. And this is where is the catch for the market to understand whether this is a displacement or whether this is going to be an innovation which is likely to remain in the market for a long duration of time, or whether this is going to be a very, very temporary phase and which will cease to exist. Or are there going to be large accelerations? And we've seen this happen, so the innovations that have really taken place is we never thought of a movie being released on an OTT platform, so which has become a reality today. So these are the shifts and the changes which are happening in multiple sectors. And I'm sure the real estate is also a sector which has not remained away from, this changes and the shifts that we are seeing. And all this while, when I have a physical interface, we always have that challenge. When I see someone in front of me, it is much easier for me to manipulate, speak, discuss, talk, put the right words, when I can actually see the complete body language of a person. As opposed to that, there is a limitation that I have in terms of an interface that happens in a virtual meeting. Having said this, do I have to look at the different kinds of influencers in my marketing strategy or in my selling techniques? Is what a lot of companies today worldwide are thinking. And that is where the influencer was only a salesman or a salesperson, who was meeting the client, or maybe someone across the counter was actually doing it, has suddenly shifted and changed with the kind of digital influencers that we have around us. So there are multiple kind of digital influencers that we see today, and the products are being driven by this. Also, second thing that I've seen, that the shift and the change in the market is on the spending capabilities, consumption patterns, which has undergone a sea change in last 14 months. The disposable incomes for people have also gone down drastically, because a lot of IT companies, and if you look at the paying kind of customers who had more disposable incomes, there has been a shift in the income levels as well. So this is where the correction is required in the market in terms of how do I approach, and then would be the second part where I get into an experience. So what kind of experience am I speaking of? In fact, even our industry, for that matter, education has undergone a metamorphic change. If you ask me today, I don't work in a private institution, but the private institutions are undergoing this particular change, where it is driven by the fee that is. I always, as a director of an institute, said this. I mean, very categorically, always made this statement in the class that you are not here and you've not bought a service, that you pay an X amount to get an MBA degree is not what you. But that's, if I look at it crudely from the perspective of the fee that gets paid and what do you get in return. So the service offerings have also changed in a lot of sectors. Because in the real estate, it is actually the brick and mortar that you are selling. But in some of the other industries and in some of the other sectors, it has so happened that the offerings have changed completely. The method of sales has completely changed. But at the same time, if I look at the opportunities that have got created, I think this has also opened up opportunities, cross-border, So where the product was only being sold and looked at from a local perspective or a regional perspective, has gone to, a perspective which has become very global. It's not that people were not selling their products in the global market space, but the number of users who have got into the internet have also gone up tremendously. So mobile penetration, for example, is a big boon, and which has not been explored. And I think there are a lot of data points which are available today with marketers to understand what really works, what doesn't work, what have been the spending patterns, where have been the places where people have made maximum investments and spendings, and which are the places where they've curtailed. I think these are the few things that need to be really thought of, before we even get into the journey of actual sales. And then the second part comes of the sales, and how sales is going to change and transform in next few years. And there is history to what I'm speaking, So 9/11 changed a lot of thinking of people in terms of travel and security.
Yeah.
While here it is all about health and wellness, which is taking the prime seat. And also, if we're just talking about the real estate, the shift and the change has been in the expectation of the consumers of maybe a workstation and a working space in the home or whatever, so which is being thought of. But it's also important to understand what is going to remain as a permanent phenomena and what is going to be only some kind of displacement that is going to happen in the market, or is it going to be an innovation with which I have to live? So these are the few things that marketers have to think through very clearly before they think of the next 6 months plans. And I'm sure the way things are going, it is at least next 2 quarters for most of the people who are in the business will have to face this music of being in the virtual space, that there is a very, very little face-to-face interaction. That was it.
Right. Thank you, ma'am. So, adding to that, as Dr. Apurva said, to recognize what is permanent and what is displacement and what is temporary. Some pointers where, as businesses also, we can kind of categorize based on the industry and then move ahead from there to make sure that the customers are having a good experience. Dhruv, could you just tell us in brief what experiential marketing really is?
Sure. So experiential marketing is a very wide term. When we talk about what all comes under experiential marketing, anything under the event management, gamut. So earlier we used to call ourselves the event management industry, but then it's a little limiting, right? With digital coming in, with activations happening, with consumer promos happening, there were a lot of times where we would not fit conventionally into the event management space. People would still associate event management with doing a live event or doing a wedding or doing a big stage, right?
Right.
But as companies engage with brands more, brands are going digital, brands are experiencing new stuff. We also have to reinvent ourselves and give ourselves a fancier term called experiential marketing. But ultimately, anything where we are touching a consumer, right? Where we are creating a wow experience for a consumer comes under experiential marketing, right? Whether it could be through an exhibition that we are planning or executing for our client, or it could be a consumer promo or an activation or a mall setup or a product launch, right? So hence, that's how the entire experiential marketing world revolves around.
Right. So, Dhruv, if I'm not wrong in assuming so experiential marketing we basically touch the consumer directly, right?
Either the consumer or it could be the client's internal team, or it could be their dealers. But we are creating something where we are engaging with one of their cohorts, right? That's what experiential marketing is all about. Might be a prospective buyer, might be a user, might be a fan, might be their team member.
Right. Very true. Right. Thank you for explaining that for us. Can gamification be a viable tool to engage customers with your brand?
See, the answer to this is not black and white. Gamification is emerging as a trend word right now, and everybody is talking about gamification. And it was like one of those words 4-5 years ago of augmented reality. Everybody was saying augmented reality, but nobody understood it, right? So gamification is important. It is important, but I would say it is one of the tool amongst many. If your brand and your consumer, like I said, we study the consumer and the context, right? If you study your brand and you find out that gamification is necessary to connect, then yeah, definitely it should be a part of your media mix, right? Because a lot of people say that it's going to replace some traditional tools that are out there, right? That's completely wrong assumption to make. Gamification can come and nest within your available tool network to kind of help you gain that objective of whatever your brand is doing. Having said that, after the point of gamification, the way I look at gamification is that it can help you break the familiarity barrier, right? It could be a soft introduction to the brand. It could be a disarming way to introduce your brand into your life. But having said that, in the sales journey, the actual trial of whatever the product be it an automotive product, be it a consumer product or an FMCG product, uh, the actual trial of the product also becomes important. So gamification is just one tool. Uh, also, what helps to understand whether the gamification is going to work for you or not is to understand the nature of gamification itself, right? Because gamification has different meanings for different age groups. So while the youth are looking at gamification, and the payoff out of the gamification could be pure thrills or a sense of achievement. If you look at gamification and it's interpreted to a senior age group, right? For them, it could just be the purpose of a non-intimidating way of giving information about your brand. It's not necessarily to involve them or to take them to a higher level. It could just be an information imparting way. It could be done in a very non-technological way. Gamification doesn't mean that you have to go into the classic definition of gamification, high special effects and this thing. It could be very simple. It could be an entertaining way to kind of enter into a consumer's life. So yeah, gamification is important, but it will be one of the many tools that will come into your repertoire.
Right. Just part of the journey, not the journey itself.
No, never. That's what people said about internet and like I said, augmented reality, that that has come now. Something else is going to die, but nothing dies. We just change the form that we use it in, and it becomes a part of the whole marketing mix.
Right, and then also, like you said, it depends on the brand and the message that you're trying to convey. Gamification will not always fit in all the molds that you want.
Yes, the most important thing that we all have to realize is that the consumer is back into the being the center of the conversation. Sorry. So the most important thing that we have to realize is that the consumer is back at the center of the conversation, because we've seen how the world has changed in the last 1.5 years, right? So whatever our previous knowledge of the consumers was, and whatever the processes and the habits that he was using in his daily life have changed drastically. Right. So we have to look carefully at the consumer of whatever your brand that you are operating with, and figure out how is your brand now engaging with the consumer, and therefore does he require gamification or no? And if he does, what is the form of gamification that he needs?
Right. Makes sense. And yeah, like you said, I'm sure there are new analytics in the market now in the last 1.5 years.
Yes.
And the brands kind of need to adapt to that as well.
Yeah.
How should we train employees in particular to provide better customer experience to the customers of the business?
There was a very nice, elaborate, discussion which was done on this topic, and with the first-hand experience on the real estate side. But I would just like to add a few points here, and that one single point that I feel, which was driven by Shri as well, which is the future for most of the businesses is going to be based on the economy will be based completely on what we call it as the experience economy. This is what is going to be the future, is what I see, and that experience economy will define successes for companies, will define successes for products, and so which means the customer experience becomes very significant. And when we speak of the customer experience component is driven by an interface, and that interface is what is the human interface. So human-centered thinking, which needs to be brought into the employee's frame of mind, which becomes very significant, becomes very, very important. So how do we have human-centered thinking for people whom we engage, the people that we engage with us? And that is where is the component of ownership, a co-owning a kind of a concept, or the property sales that we are speaking of, probably a high involvement category that we are speaking of, or a low involvement category. Even if I speak of probably a junk jewelry that I go to buy, some 1.5 years back, it was so much driven by the sales girl who talks to me and who makes me feel really good about it. As opposed to that, things have really changed now. For a low involvement category, the interface that we have, for example, if all my buying is happening on Mentra, the person with whom I'm interacting is only the delivery boy who comes to my house to deliver that good. And the only question that the delivery boy has is, and most of the days for last 1 week, I ordered a few things because it opened up and I said that, oh, I want to buy a lot of things. And he would come. And since I work from office and not from home, my husband works from home, he would just come and say, Madam ko bolna acha rating degi. So that's the only interface that the company has. So it's not even, so if I am buying a Fab product, it is nothing to do with Fab. Fab depends on Mantra. Mantra depends on a logistic company, and the logistic company has its own set of people. So there are so many factors which are uncontrollable factors for a marketer. So, as opposed to that, in a high involvement category where the purchases are of high value, still you would have a customer interface where you could control the customer interface. But if we say that the economy will be driven only by customer experiences, and some time back you made a mention of the fact that I'm sure Anjushri will agree to the fact that a customer lost is like a collapse of mountain for someone who is in the sales. So it is very, very tough and very, very difficult. Customer acquisition costs today are so very high that word of mouth will only come provided we are able to provide that customer experience to people. And that customer experience journey happens with people in the value chain. And there could be multiple people in the value chain, which was just mentioned some time back that maybe so in the marketing terminology, we call it as the gatekeeper, the influencers, the buyer, and probably the consumer. So all of them. So there's a value chain of a set of people, and then there are other factors which influence people. But today, all these factors are changing, and customer experience journey itself is undergoing a metamorphic change. In fact, I was just reading through the problem that was in Canada some years back when I visited Canada. But there was a lady, I met up with this lady, and she was a guide, tourist guide, and I asked her, she looked very nice to me, and she said that my problem is that 9 months it is snowing here, and it's only in this 2-3 months that I get to see people. So I've taken up this profession so I can meet people and I can talk. And this has become a perpetual problem for every citizen across the globe. Even in India, for months together, people are not seeing anybody.
Yeah.
There have been instances where people have said that the salesman who was delivering on behalf of the son or the daughter actually made a story and spoke to the father or the mother to give that comfort, so that delight. So this is where the customer experiences are going to be very, very significant in times to come, where human beings will be replaced by the interface of people who are assuming the position of the son and daughter and selling that. So these are the shifts and changes that are likely to happen, where we are constrained for travel, you're constrained to just go and meet your parents or your relatives, or a wedding which is happening. So there could be multiple areas where the shifts and changes are likely to happen, and this is where the employees will play a significant. And I strongly feel that marketer will have to look through the complete value and who should be a partner. That becomes also equally significant. So today people are harrowed with the Amazons of the world, so with the arrogance that they have today. That may be the experience of a few people, may not be the experience of everyone. But today, this is a reality, and the reality check is what the marketers are required to do, that we are going to be driven by an experience economy. An experience economy will define the brands, brands will be completely defined by experiences. So there will be no other differentiator. Pricing is not going to be a differentiator in times to come. Service is not going to be a differentiator in times to come. Of course, the people in the similar category, we are not talking of people in someone who has a product at the low end of a spectrum to the high end of the spectrum. I'm not talking of that. People in a similar segment where the differentiator will be definitely going to be the experience that each and every individual gets while while buying a product, or the experience of even assessing. Even the assessment could also be one of the areas that people need to think about. That is where delight factor has to be very, very significant. And some companies have already gone to the delight while others are still trying to make a customer happy. And this shift and the change is something that the marketer has to really look up to. And the marketer will also have to look at how the competition is behaving. What is it that competition has actually done? What is the kind of products? It doesn't mean that they have to replicate. But these need to be thought through from a holistic perspective in today's time. And this is what is going to be the future, as I rightly see, is the experience economy, which is likely to remain in future.
How important is consumer experience in the event industry?
Sure. So, like I was explaining to you, event industry is all about creating that wow experience, right? Whether it is a product launch, we have to create that experience, that a person who's coming in doesn't forget, for the rest of their life, or it's a music concert, that you would go to, or it's a wedding that you would, attend, or it could be an exhibition that you're going to. It's all about creating that experience.
Right.
That is what is the, I would say, the key backbone for experiential marketing. It's all about creating an experience around a brand that a consumer would remember for a very long time. Now that experience is ideally created in a touch and feel way, where they come and experience a live event happening, or a live performer performing right in front of their eyes, or a new product being launched on a with a big LED screen in front of them, or a car being launched in a very dramatic way.
Yeah.
Ultimately, we are creating consumer experiences that people will go back and remember. It's something extraordinary that will help them connect with the brand. So we are all about creating experiences.
What are the best ways to conduct business continuity impact analysis, according to you?
The traditional means of research and having data analysis done are still very much alive. Online research modules have just shot up to the roof, right?
Yeah.
Earlier, when the lockdown happened and people were thinking, oh, how are we going to do the data mining now? And it's just replaced. One-on-ones are now done over Google Meet as much as we are having a conversation right now. So nothing has actually changed except everything. The research modules have moved online, right? Certainly, business, the way it's conducted, has not changed, because in the recent past, I think our agency itself has launched 4 brands completely new. One was a tea brand, one was a house cleaning brand, things that are very high at the top of the mind right now. One was a TV channel from the Z Group, right? And one was an online payment services. And everything regarding these launches was done remotely, right from the strategic part to the research part to the concept research. Everything was done online. And we've just figured out a way to now do our transact digitally with whatever is the end purpose, right? Having said that, what this pandemic has done is that the processes, the technological processes, the electronic processes, the data mining processes have become very accurate over the past 1.5 to 2 years, right? So qualitatively, to get the data for the business impact in continuity, that has become very, very easy. So qualitatively, you can actually do your data analysis in a lot many more ways than what you were doing earlier. But what I feel is that this is a great chance for marketeers, because you're forced to take a step back and rethink your business processes. This is a great time for marketers to look at the consumers who are around them in their immediate vicinity and look at them as real people, not as consumers on a PPT. Normally we just say demographics XYZ, age group XYZ, and then we think we have a mental picture. But now that's it's a chance to look at them as real human people, to look at motivations that are driving people around us, right? Even in whatever little social contact we have, and to connect to them as people on a more human level. And if we understand that, right, what is driving them, brands will have a more deeper, more emotional, and a stronger connect to these people. And instead of them measuring the impact on business continuity, what we would be measuring is as the strong bond that we have with the consumer. And I think instead of going from a pure profit and loss kind of a statement, we'll be going to a much higher level of engagement or depth data measurement, of consumers and how loyal they are to you. I think that would be that is a great opportunity which is present right now.
Right. And actually spoken like true brand engagement person. Because again, like we said, like in advertising, consumers are just numbers in advertising. And
Yeah, true.
Right, in that the main focus is that to put data on the consumer when the brand feels like it, not when the consumer wants to see it.
Exactly. So if you just look at our lives, and you take a snapshot of how fragmented our lives are. Like I've stopped watching TV about 5 years ago, and I'm not taking that as the prime lead example, but it's a case in point. Most of my consumption happens over video consumption happens over Netflix. Most of my news feed comes over Google. I don't subscribe to any other this thing because at least Google News comes verified to you. So the point of engagement which I have with brands is changed completely. Whatever the brands that come at me from an electronic medium, a few of them come when I'm out walking in the open world, whenever there's not a lockdown around. Our attention spans, our habits have changed drastically. So I think it's necessary, imperative for all marketers to look at the consumer first, right? All the jargons and all the abbreviations and all the formulas can wait. We can look at the people around us and we can decipher what is the need for them, what drives them as people, and what role can the brand play in their lives. And then this business impact analysis or the business continuity impact can be measured and become part of the whole process, not the end goal. Because many times brands are super consumed with what is the profit, what is the loss, and also over the years of 2.5 decades, I've seen that this is the emerging trend. Everybody is only focused on the quarter numbers and the annual numbers. Back when I started advertising, and I know that makes me feel really old, but back when I started advertising, there were people who used to work for the same company for 10 years, 15 years, and they really, because of that long time spent there, what the brand perception was a very key aspect for them. It was not only profit and loss. Sometimes you could go into losses, but what the brand perception was the key to them. And that is a direct result of what is your relationship with the consumer.
Right. And yeah, even when we look at the brands today, there was a time period when, I guess when I was a little person, like when I was a child, right? At that time, I remember all the brands because I feel like, it proves your point that at that time, people were actually, brands were focusing on what kind of a message that they were providing rather than just seeing ki kitne numbers are there. So Dr. Apurva, why legacy-based marketing mediums might not work post-pandemic, and what are the adaptations that we can do in the industry? So sort of what you were saying earlier, I guess more or less it answers the question. But if you want to, if you'd like to add a few more points on this.
Yeah, we're all going into a digital era
Yeah.
where we are all going to be governed by the digital framework, and we have probably the whole country which is digitized today. I mean, some years back, uh, my watchman got ill, and the son asked for the money. The only way we paid the money was Google Pay, which is not something which was a reality some years back. But the point that we're trying to drive here is that India will be driven by mobiles. India will not be driven so much by the internet on a laptop, but country like India will be driven by the mobile revolution, which is already there, which has reached all the quarters. And pandemic has given opportunities for us. But it's also important to understand in the digital medium, how do we interact with the client and customers, which is
Right.
becoming very significant. It's not just about the journey or selection of a product. It is the selection of a product to the aspect of how the payments get made and how the deliveries are transacted. So digitized medium and the ability, virtual reality is going to be the thing, and artificial intelligence that we are speaking of. While we're sitting here, we are with Cogni elements. So AI is going to be very, very important and significant in times to come. That is what I feel. And, that is, I mean, I was in Israel some 4 years back, and when I was speaking there, and this is considered to be the most innovative nation, and Israel was all driven by how do we bring in a virtual reality for a match which is being played, or a soccer which is being played in England, and how do I play the same game sitting in my house is something that I saw 4 years back. But today, this is a reality for everyone sitting here in India, in Turkey, in England, in US, in Australia. For everyone, this has become a reality. I strongly feel, and in the beginning of my interactions, where I said that it is about 66 days that people get hooked to a given kind of a platform. I'm not surprised that my mother-in-law is 75-year-old today, is also doing her transactions online, to as opposed to um, my niece whose son is barely in standard two, understands. I mean, he comes and tells me that don't go to safari, So he's the one who tells me it's not safari. You have to go Chrome. So everything has changed because he's doing his classes every day. So he knows exactly where to identify things. So the next generation is going to be a different generation, because the kind of training and learning that they're doing at a very, very early age, everything is going to explode, and data is going to be the future. And
Right.
it's important for all of us to understand how do we make use of the data, and of course bring in the human centricity in whatever we do, which is going to be the future. So digitization with human centricity is what is going to prevail in times to come.
Right. And like you said earlier, experienced economy is going to be the new trend, as in how we go forward from here. Yeah, I mean, people are forced to adapt now, and even on an individual level, it's very hard. So even as customer, so if I think about myself as a customer, even on an individual level, I've been forced to make so many adaptations. And even and some of them are so unconscious, subconscious rather. Like Manjushri Muhammad said, they're so subliminal that you might just miss it. But it's very important for you to actually make notice of even the smallest things, because that's going to help in the bigger run, the longer run, and the bigger picture. Moving on to the next one, how experiential marketing can create an impact.
Well, there are amazing, case studies and stories here how experiential marketing has created an impact. Right. So right from attending a event, right, to interacting with the audience, to now new age ways as well. So we have also learned to upgrade with technology. Now there are AR invites that we have started using into our events. There are VR interactions that we have there. So there, it's always about upping the experience and curating something special for the consumers. That is what the entire experiential marketing is all about. Is that what your question is, or you want me to elaborate more?
That does answer the question, but if you could give us an example, that would be a tagline.
Yeah, so I'll give you a very interesting example. We were doing, a watch launch for Tag Heuer. They had come up with this new international tagline called "Don't crack under pressure," right? So this was the brief, as simple that we need to do an event which is all about adrenaline and which brings out this tagline alive of "Don't crack under pressure." Now we were really thinking, how do we bring this out? What do we do? And the other big thing was that they said that we are changing, we are introducing a new brand ambassador, which is Ranbir Kapoor. And, he had to be introduced for the first time to the media, right? And with this tagline, so these are the two main things that we had to come up, right, in this entire brand launch or experience that we had to curate for Tag. So we, after doing a lot of homework, we came out with this idea that let's do this event at the F1 track, which is there in Greater Noida, the Budh International Circuit. Let's create an event there where it's all about fast cars because Tag is associated with F1 racing, etc. And let's do a very dramatic entry for the brand ambassador, which brings out this element of risk, this element of don't crack under pressure, doing curating an exercise which really kind of breaks the norm. So what we did is there is this special aircraft which is called a flyboy, which is a two-seater aircraft, and this can take off from a very small distance, and it doesn't need like a really big place to land. So we got Ranbir to actually be a part of this short flight, which took off from one part of BIC, and he landed on the tarmac when our event was on high. So we had a car chase experience where there were stunts happening, and the entire media was busy seeing that, and then they saw this small flight landing right in front of them, and that's how we introduced this entire tagline, and that's how we introduced Ranbir as the new brand ambassador. So
Okay.
this is a perfect example of I am sure those the stripes, the media people won't forget this experience for a long time of spending that evening at the F1 track, seeing all these stunts, and then being introduced to a new brand ambassador in a very don't crack under pressure way.
Yeah, it does sound very thrilling.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dhruv. Prasanna, the next question is actually related to something that you said earlier. Do you think that remote working has actually increased, productivity and output?
The jury is very much split on this topic. There is no clear answer that's emerging in this respect. Actually, what has happened is that this work from home is a very peculiar phenomenon. There are no boundaries anymore that segregate your home life and your office life. 1 minute you are in your living room with your family and you're enjoying. The next moment you're in a call in another room discussing business deals and numbers. It's not allowed us to process this whole functioning in a very systematic way. We were just shoved into it and we've adapted to that. So
Yeah.
on one hand, what has happened with work from home is that because of obviously the commute being less, or the time is saved and you can spend that time doing other things. Environmentally, work from home has proved to be a boon. So the guilt that everybody used to have of driving a car, using public transport, polluting the environment, that's gone. So that's reduced your mental kind of guilt. But on a personal level, the thing that has happened is what I was saying, like that the full stop to a work day has not emerged, right? So we've seen patterns emerging which are not so good for personal health or mental health. I would say, I would go so far as to say that the output might have gone up, but I'm not sure whether productivity itself has gone up, or maybe it's even gone a little lesser. I'm think that it's either status quo or it's gone slightly down. We have the impression that we are working a lot, so that's why our productivity is up. But I think we are just consuming time. The disciplines of an office, right? The disciplines of an office. Because of the newness of this whole system, we've not kind of been able to adapt and form new practices that have given us a definitive timetable.
Right.
What has happened? We were creatures of habit. Sometimes just dumping that office bag onto your desk made you realize that this is the start of the workday. Now I am supposed to change my thinking, change my mind. There is a certain different way I behave in the office. Those triggers have gone out, and we've not replaced them with new triggers or new systems. Right? For instance, Bloomberg, the international agency, did an online study recently, and it stated that only 25% of the respondents, and it was, I think, a study done with, if I remember correctly, around 25,000 people in the US. It was primarily US, not India so much, but only 25% there believed that their productivity had gone up, right, of the consumers. Right, so overwhelming 75% were split. There was a large majority which thought that it's the same. There were some that thought it has gone down, right? But the interesting thing that came out of that Bloomberg survey was that an overwhelming 54% of the audience wanted to return to a physical office space, and the reason for that was very difficult. Was very different, right? Some people were saying they like to have the focus that they got in office. Some people said that they like the free interaction and the brainstormings, the impromptu brainstormings that they could have with other people. And lastly was this whole factor of having a definite switch off time from work. So there were a lot of interesting things that came out of this study. And this switch off, I think, will play a great role. And even employers will realize this, that this switch off time will play a great role in preventing employee burnout and having a higher employee retention rate. Employees have also said in that study that they want to go back to the office spaces, primarily because they have a pride of going back into the office also. So imagine a sector like real estate. For them, it's great news, so that they know exactly that the kind of office spaces or commercial spaces that are required now will have to play a much more active role in that human's life. They will have to increase his social interactivity. They will have to give him mental peace, including health benefits for this new office space. And only then will he feel the pride in going back to his workspace. So I think this whole work from home is a very split jury, and we'll have to look at it more carefully and analyze, and we'll have to introduce new systems to make it more productive for us.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I completely understand that, that mental click that you talked about. Even the process of dumping the bag on the couch.
And some people just had a switch of, the car drive back, car drive back from office to home. They had this music on or radio station on, and that was their switch over time. We each had different triggers and different indicators of the fact that okay, the work day has ended, and it helped you in whatever manner. Maybe the driving stress increased, but it also meant that the work fatigue was a little out, and you could go into a relaxation zone. So we still have to figure out a new system which is going to be largely beneficial for us, even if it's from work from home.
Right. So, like you said, the output might have increased, but the productivity is still questionable.
Yeah.
So for the last question of the session that I have for Dr. Apurva is, ma'am, according to you, what are the changes expected in ATL, above the line, below the line, and through the line in marketing activity space?
Brilliant question. Through the line is what is going to remain, is what we see. Above the line is like a real tough challenge where advertising revenues are shrinking for a lot of people. You can see the size of the newspapers have gone down. So Times of India, which was some 30 pages, has now gone to 20, 22 pages. So most of them have this particular challenge where advertising has taken a big hit. It's going to be the digitized mediums, where, and of course, below the line also is tough because the interface with the stores are also reducing, So
Yeah.
probably for an industry that Manchester is into, it will still remain prevalent where you're actually showcasing a product. It might be prevalent for the jewelry industry where people actually go, touch, feel, etc. See a product. But for a common kind of a product, which is an FMCG kind of a product, is going to be reduced over a period of time is what I really feel. And just responding to the earlier part also, where we were talking about the B2B and B2C. This is, I'll just link this question to that as well, which is also based on the future, which is through the line that we've been talking of, which did not really exist some years back. So, for example, before the revolution that Facebook brought in, we never thought of a B2C kind of a product for a commoner. A commoner never dreamt of getting into B2C because of and if we were into a volume kind of business and basic consumptions are very, very high, a marketer would say, this is not my cup of tea, let me get into B2B kind of. So this is where through the line, because it is through the line where you understood what is the need of the customer. And this is where you have created a product for yourself. And I am not just talking about the Facebook of the world. I have a very excellent example in Pune city alone. There's a platform called Pula Ladies in Pune. Since three women are sitting here, I thought I might just want to share this platform, and a platform which was created by a woman who was teaching in a school and drawing a salary of 8,000 rupees in a school, is where, for fun's sake, she came in to create this particular platform with 200, 300 of her friends. And today we have this Pula Ladies. It's a big platform which is what created with more than 1 lakh members. I think the numbers, I've not tracked the current ones, but this was about a year back when the numbers were 1 lakh. And it's a platform which got created, and from the platform came in a lot of products and services. And then, you have a market on Wednesday, you have this on Thursday, and you have something else on Wednesday. And so which is like, you have got into B2C completely, which was not ATL, which is not BTL, through the line. So this is what is going to be there. Through the line is what is the future that we actually see. And today the girl moves in a Mercedes car today, So Facebook gave her an award for, having maximum number of subscribers, etc. Unknowingly, those platforms got created. But now in an organized manner, people are by design creating such platforms where they're creating communities of people. Communities are going to be the drivers in the long run, and which is through the line that communities will work, and communities are going to be the future for marketers in times to come. This is my one-liner for this question.
Very well said, ma'am. I'll definitely check out that platform. I wasn't aware, but I'll definitely check it out now. How has the pandemic changed the entire CX for the event industry?
Well, the pandemic has definitely changed our industry overall. When you talk about CX or no CX, we've been one industry which has been hit the hardest, right? So, but being really resilient as well, we've been able to learn new things. So one thing that has happened because of this pandemic is that we've actually learned stuff that we would otherwise take 5 years to learn. And from the tech perspective, we would have taken a leap of, I would say, not 5, maybe even 10 years, right? All of us have learned the art of doing virtual events. All of us have learned to leverage technology in a very good way. today, we are having this discussion online and we are very comfortable about it. We all have done, we tried to create the magic that we used to do in our physical events into virtual events. There are a lot of, tech that we've explored. We've met with partners. Like we ourselves have launched a complete virtual platform, for doing, various events. So there is a lot of, tech advancements that have happened throughout this entire year.
Okay. So Dhruv, on this note, I have a follow-up question. Like if you can just outline, one of the major points, maybe that has changed between physical events and a virtual event.
Well, a lot has changed. So I'll give you an example. Just before the lockdown, we had done an event called Amazon Sambhav. This event was the biggest B2B event that had taken place in India, right? Where the highlight of this event was that Jeff Bezos had come down to India, and he was addressing the entire trading community and the business community for SMBs, basically, right? So we had a big event which was spread across 2 days, at the Jawaharlal Nehru Stadium, and 4,000 people attended this event, right? This was the high of our life. That wow, we are doing an event with 4,000 people, managing them, creating. We had taken up the entire Audi at Jawaharlal Nehru, and we had created a dome. We had imported a dome from overseas. First time, such a huge dome which can fit in, 5,000 people was installed, where we had our experience zones, where we had exhibitions, where we had meeting areas for people. Now, post that, so we did this event, and in a couple of months, this event was done in 2020, and in a couple of months, we were all facing in the entire pandemic. Now, when this event was done again by Amazon, they this time had no choice but to do it virtually.
Yeah.
Imagine the number of people who attended this event.
Right.
More than 70,000. So from 4,000 people, we were feeling that, wow, we've achieved the moon with 4,000 people attending our event. Amazon got 70,000 people who attended their event this time. And this is without Jeff Bezos, right? So that has been a big, an example of how this impact has happened. So if you look at it in the hindsight, it's only opened up the entire horizon for us, right? There was a limitation. How many people will you call in a fixed event? 2,000, 3,000. You take a stadium, you'll call 4,000 people, right?
Right.
Here, through the same event, 70,000 plus people attended the same event virtually. So you can imagine the kind of, the vastness that the entire, virtual space has provided us. So there has really been a lot of learning. There were ways that people can be engaged. There are ways where photo ops can happen. There are so many new possibilities which have opened up. The entire geography, boundary has gone. People could be sitting anywhere in the world and attending your event, or seeing your car launch, or seeing your mobile launch. Fans could join in from anywhere. So it has really opened up our world. And this, I sincerely believe that this is going to be a landmark here, where we will all learn new things, and we'll be able to do even more exciting stuff than we used to do before.
Right. Yeah. Makes sense. I wasn't expecting 70,000 plus people. I mean, makes sense also कि अभी तो access ज़्यादा मिल गया. The last question of the evening that we have is, how can we reduce the gap between technology and older generation?
Yeah. So that's a very nice question actually. I think the best way to increase the gap is to, as they say in swimming, to jump into the deepest end of the pool. And if you see at the pandemic, that has it's a metaphor of the same sort. Everybody was forced to go digital. Even the senior citizens, their habits have changed. The people around them, if senior citizens were staying away from their children, the only way to get in touch with them or to see their face was through WhatsApp or Zoom or several other video calls. So they were forced to adapt into this technological era. And I think it's a great thing that has happened. It's a great thing that has happened because the so-called necessity of adapting to this digital thing has taken away a part of the intimidation. Earlier, the people were saying that I'm good with a keypad phone. Now the senior citizens are more amenable to migrating to a smartphone. So in small steps and in a very short burst of time, senior citizens have gone to the other side. And what I feel is that actually, if you look at India, India is also a fledgling country when you think in terms of we are 70 years of independence. But really, when the technological boom happened, right, the last 20 years, right, India was a very young country, and we were thrown from one end and, like I said, like into the deep end of the pool, and we adapted it so well. Like one of the primary usage of WhatsApp and how it infiltrated into the lower stratas of society where the blue collar workers are, like carpenters and upholstery makers, is WhatsApp. We were using WhatsApp for doing business transactions or whatever, but they realized that if they use WhatsApp to show you pictures of wood finishes or tiles or just fabrics, it was actually helping them do their business. And therefore WhatsApp had such a great penetration in people who are not supposedly educated. They still adapted to technology. It's the same thing with senior citizens. A lot of net apps, a lot of food delivery apps, a lot of healthcare apps, a lot of maintenance, housekeeping apps like Urban Clap or whatever. They've started to do that. The best example that I can think of right now is the COVID app, right? The COVID app where you have to get your vaccinations done. Maybe the youngsters in your family are doing it for you, but they are making sure that the senior citizens sit by their sides and they look. So this whole intimidation of technology that existed 2 years ago, that has gone away completely. It's no longer an alien thing which I don't want to use. If I don't have to, I have to use it. So I'm getting a little bit more involved with it. And the more involved the senior citizens are getting, the better they're getting at it. Because I think to introduce technology to the senior citizens, it's necessary to think of how we have been using the brain for a long time, right? Like I said, we are creatures of habit, right? So we were used to using the pencil in a certain way, the pen in a certain way. Now we use the finger on the smartphone in a certain way. And I think if those broad concepts are broken down and made simpler for the senior citizens to use, I think the adaptation of the technology will be much, much faster. Also, what you have to realize is that what is the role that the family can play into making the senior citizens more comfortable. For instance, you can have grandchildren playing the role of advocates of technology. Because as you know, grandparents and grandchildren is the most loving and most forgiving relationship. The parents can be hard on their children, but the grandparents can never be hard on the grandchildren. Yeah? And the grandchildren have their own way of imparting knowledge back to the grandparents. And it's a very loving exchange. So part of that intimidation of the technology can be taken away by that. And as is said in a very famous phrase, it's technology to you only if you were born before it, right? For children who are born, iPhone, iPad, and all this are ways of growing up. To them, it's not technology. To them, my 5-year-old daughter can navigate the iPad just as well as I do. She can launch Netflix. She can switch profiles. She can go to episodes, whatever, just as much with ease. Because to her, it's not a technology. She's grown up with it. So that's what they say. It's technology only if you were born before it to you. And that's what's happening with the senior citizens. So if we explain the concepts of technology rather than going into details and telling you functionality and buttons and this and that, I think the senior citizens will also kind of rewire the way that they think and they process, and it will be much, much faster.
Yeah. Also, adding to that, with senior citizens, one of the major problems is that, like not problems, but then as we grow older, we become more and more rigid in the way we think.
Yes.
So then it becomes very difficult for anyone to kind of come and advocate something for you. So I really
Right.
love that idea. कि
Yeah.
grandchildren ko bata do.
Yeah,
They will
exactly.
they
So
will do the
you
job.
have to, you have to introduce it in a,
Yeah.
non-intimidating environment, right?
Yeah.
And it's not true that so like I said, like you said rightly, that the brain becomes used to a way of functioning, right?
Yeah.
So it becomes a rigid practice, right? But it's not true that they will not learn anything. If you look around at our grandparents or at our elderly parents, even now, right? Uh, they have gone used to watching Ekta Kapoor serials, right? Earlier they watching it on TV, right? And yeah, suppose if they miss it now, they can go on the app and they can watch a rerun of an episode. So if it suits to their purpose and if it interests them, they will adapt to the technology. Similarly, for a lot of people, like our elderly people used to do exercises at home. Uh, how the sneakers and how the latest range of sneakers, right, have become a part of their walking regime.
Yeah.
They have got adapted to the point of shock absorption in sole, what is the gel sole and all that. They become interested in it. That's also technology coming at them. But if it
Right.
is adding value to their life and it is being explained to them in broad concepts, that listen, this gel sole will kind of reduce the impact on your knees, which are in a fragile state in your life, then they will accept that better. So it just depends on how you present the information to them and in what manner is it coming to you.
Right. Also, my dad, grew up with television. He binge watches everything on Netflix now.
Yeah, true.
So yeah,
True.
they are forced to adapt. They are forced to adapt now.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing, that the brain figures out a new way of function.
Yeah.
The brain figures
Yeah.
it out, and it's just a question of how you are doing it, or what is the help that you're taking to introduce it to them.
Right. We are very easy to adapt. It's just like you said,
Yeah.
how we do it is the point.
Payment gateways are one thing. Nowadays Google Pay, Paytm, people have become very conversant with this language. And I remember my mother used to be very afraid of using Paytm or this thing. So we opened a low bank balance thing which is connected to Paytm. So even if there is a fraud or whatever, it's a minimal impact. But once they came to know that the OTP is what I'm not supposed to give out, or if anybody calls me for anything else and asks me for information, I'm not supposed to give it. And if I've spoken to XYZ person gives me a message saying how much is the money required, on what phone number I have to give. Now they know it, right? Because it's a convenience to their life.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's just a question of doing it in the right way. And I think the technological barriers, they are wanting to adapt because the conveniences are far outweighing the intimidation factor of the technology. So a lot of senior citizens are very afraid to go into crowded places, because they are fragile. They seem they want to stay away. The conveniences of having a Zomato or a grocery delivery services that come, that itself is such a big boon to them that they are willing to now switch over to the technology.
Yeah. Yeah. Like you said, convenience over intimidation.
Yeah. Definitely the case there.
Okay. Thank you so much, Prasanna. Moving on to the last question. What do you think are the benefits of digitally transforming experientials and upgrading CX?
Yeah, so I've already talked about a lot about this in my previous example. There are a lot of benefits. Number one is cost benefit. So our clients are able to manage their costs much better when you talk about doing an event. So in fact, one major benefit that we've seen is that uh, people are now focusing towards hybrid events. Our events are not going to be the same like they used to be prior, right? If prior we were doing an event, we would at max do a webcasting of that event and a few people would see it. Now, with this experience, with the experience that we all have now to curate experiences, through virtual events, all events are going to be hybrid. There are going to be a set number of people who are going to be getting the experience live, and there are going to be a large number of people who are going to be attending it who are going to be part of the experience, but they're going to be part of the experience virtually. So what benefit this gets is that the cost is going to be optimized much more. The same example, 4,000 people versus 70,000 people, the cost per contact, what our client used to see, it really goes down. Now he has the option of getting into a cost per contact that is worth for them, and hence more work can happen, right? Distance not being a factor at all. People could be attending from anywhere. Using of technologies has gone up. AR and VR, it's exploded through the roof. So all of these are sort of advantages that I feel that the pandemic and this entire quantum leap we've taken for at least 10 years has led on to.
This ends our session today, and on behalf of Cogni Elements, we are very grateful for all the knowledge that you have shared, and on behalf of all the viewers as well, I'm very sure everyone has learned something new today. We are very grateful to have you here.